Alright, I think I'm going to be going mostly off script for these skill tree videos, but let's just get right to it. So for the Hunter, like every class, they have top row, which is just quality of life skills that don't cost any points. Just pick those up as soon as you possibly can, and they're very helpful. Then, like almost every class, you have your step skills, which you usually get by default. And if you don't, for some reason, take them. And then the step advance, however, is really not always worth taking. I'll show you on another class that actually have points into. You'll see that even at max with 10 whole points, which is a lot of skill points when you think about it, only gives you 1/5 of a second longer invulnerability. And since it is a fast-paced game, that is helpful, but not nearly as much as you'd think, especially for Hunter, which is blocking a lot of the times, instead of moving. And some of these abilities will be changing name, such as Step will be Sidestep now, I believe, and Gear is now called Focus, and as in S-Attack you see is now called Melee Power, and so on. But the skill trees themselves should look identical, just some names would be a little bit different. These two bonuses here you see up top, you probably won't be getting until a few months down the road on North American version, but if they're there, take them as soon as you possibly can. As I went over in the actual skill tree video, all these stat boost ones, they aren't always worth taking into, at least for a main class, as they take a lot of skill points, and they don't really give that much to you endgame. Early game, they give a bit, like each one of these gives up to 50 to 100 melee power each, which is great, but late game that's only going to equate to not even 5% of your total damage. When stuffed down the tree, as you can see here, if I hover over Guard Stance Advance, gives me 50% damage. Or Fury Stance, which eventually gives you 45%. So, it is worth taking these, especially for a subclass, but not as a main class. You could, but it might hurt you down the road. So then we go right back to the beginning. You want all of your guards, and Just Guard, which will be called Perfect Guard. And to do that, you would just do that right as the enemy attacks instead of holding it down. And then you have your Healing Guard. Not everyone takes this, but it's actually a pretty good skill, and it's only 1 point. And basically after you get a Perfect Guard, it just heals you and everyone around you. And it's only 5% of your max health, but I mean, you're guarding a lot here and there, and it's 5% to just everyone, and that adds up. You then have your Mastery skill, which you should be taking on no matter what class you are, and then you have your Focus gear skill, which you should be taking. And then your most important thing here, probably in this almost entire tree, is Charge Parry. And this basically allows you to block while you're charging up any of your weapon skills. And this is great because a lot of your skills take some charge time, and you could be like a sitting duck there, and this allows you to just keep doing your thing without getting interrupted. And there's Perfect Guard PP gain, and that just simply gives you your resources back whenever you just guard. You don't need to take this at all, but it is helpful. Then you have your step attacks and just reversal, which you want those all the time. This helps you recover when you get blown away. You hit your spacebar really fast. If you do it fast enough, you get back on your feet without getting knocked down. You then have all of your focuses, and you should take one of these for every weapon you use. You don't have to take them all, but just make sure you take them if you're using that weapon. Another amazing skill is All Guard. This allows you to block from 360 degrees around you. It's just pretty damn awesome. I don't see why you wouldn't take that. And here is where it gets a little bit different, and you get to go into your stances and some other skills. Iron Will is amazing. You should always take at least 1 point of this, because with just 1 point, you have a 30% chance to basically survive with 1 HP instead of dying from a lethal hit. And as you raise that up, it will give you more percentage proc rate. But for only 1 point, you can't really beat a 30% chance. It's up to you to keep going if you want to. And then you have a modifier to that, which is called Never Give Up, which allows you to get more melee power and increases the invincibility duration after Iron Will activates. It's not bad to take at all, but it's definitely up to you if you want to take it or not. Then we have War Cry, which is just a taunt, basically. And then below that is a modifier to that, which just gives you extra damage and resource recovery when using it. Not mandatory, but if it's what you want, that's what you like, it's a nice little thing to take. Next, I'd like to talk about Automate Half-Line, and this is a skill you should definitely take no matter which stance you take. You do need to put at least 3 points into guard stance to unlock it though, but that's pretty much worth it. With Automate Half-Line, it automatically uses a mate item, which is the heal items, whenever you get below half health, and it doesn't take an animation. A lot of the times when you get caught in this game, it's when you're just trying to heal yourself with a mate item, and you're stuck in an animation doing that, and it kinda sucks. You don't have to max it like I did here, but it's really good skill to take. Another skill that's really cool on this list that you don't have to take, but I like personally, is that when you use guard stance and it's activated, any enemy that dies within a certain area restores 10% of your max HP. It's another very nice quality of life type of skill. Doesn't need to be maxed, doesn't need to be used at all, but it's there. Off to the far right, you'll see a few one-off skills that are modifiers to guard stance, which basically help you take off poison, burn, and limit duration of status effects on you when in guard stance. They're not terrible to take for 1 point, but in general, it's not always needed, because those effects don't really hurt that bad. You can usually heal through it. But the status one is not too bad. Then for guard stance itself, it simply just gives you more defense and reduces incoming damage, but opens you up to a few more things down the line, such as Flash Guard, and this further reduces damage from ranged and striking. And Guard Stance Advanced, which is actually probably the most important part of Guard Stance. This gives you a buff comparable to what the Fury Stance would give you as far as damage when you Perfect Guard properly. So with this stance, you can be offensive and defensive, it just requires you to try a little bit harder. Going down even further, another skill that is usually suggested to take whether you are on Fury stance or not would be Massive Hunter. And this is really cool in the fact that it lasts 45 seconds and only has a cooldown of 90 seconds, so its uptime is about half the time. And it reduces the damage you take, and it stops you from being CC'd. So that's pretty cool. Then we can bounce back over to the left side, where the Just Attack bonus was actually now called Perfect Attack bonus. This just increases how much your normal attacks do. And on a Hunter, it's actually pretty useful. You don't need to max it, like always, but it's not a bad idea to take. And then we have your Fury stance, which is a very, very simple stance that just gives you straight damage. And there's nothing to it. You take the skill, and it just gives you passive damage. And then you have more modifiers to it, such as Fury Stance Boost, which just gives you even more boosts, and then more boosts, and then you have your Fury Combo Boost. And this is pretty simple, as in when you're in Fury Stance, this just increases the damage for each consecutive normal attack you do. And then there's the Fury Critical, which just increases your critical rate when you're in Fury Stance. As we go back up the tree, we do have the S-Def, the HP, as I mentioned, and again, these things are not bad, but they don't really help that much. If anything, I think the HP would help the most out of most of this, and definitely the melee power boost ones, for if you use it as a subclass. I would not use my skill tree as a perfect example of what you would want to use on a Hunter. This is just kind of a simple all-rounder defensive build, but it's kind of outdated too. I will, however, be leaving lots of links down in the description. And each of those will be for a different type of Hunter builds, and some of them will be for if you want to use Hunter as a subclass. So, like usual, just build downwards to the most important parts that you want, depending on which stance you want. And then once you get some of those, you then work your way back up into the more quality of life stuff that you want, if you have any points left. And with that, I hope you understand the Hunter skill trees a little bit better. It's actually probably one of the most straightforward and simple skill trees there is. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask, and take care.